FIFA World Cup 2026, Spain won, Argentina 0 from a mathematical and economic perspective. This game looks like it was a complete disaster, and it's a great example of why the rules of soccer are mathematically problematic. Ice hockey and baseball also have a problem, but soccer, out of all the main sports, is the worst, has the biggest problem with it. This is because the rules favor the defense. In other words, even if you have an offense that's outplaying the defense, it's very hard for them to score. Now, the law of large numbers, which was discovered in the Renaissance times and proven right before the industrial times, says that the more times you run an experiment, the closer the average of those results are going to be to the truth. Now, FIFA, a billion-dollar organization, still has not figured out this high school level math. A good way to mentally visualize this is imagine that this game was played, the same exact game was just played for 2 or 3 times per week for a month. Spain would easily win on aggregate because of these statistics. However, they just barely won in extra time, in fact, and even these shots by Argentina, I think, were all in extra time. So this game is mathematically just barely legitimate, but it shouldn't have gone that far. You can easily see a circumstance where Argentina got a lucky goal or something like that and would have won the game even though they were completely outplayed. We'll get into the next aspect of this game, and that is the economic aspect. Now, wealth and population are the biggest factors in determining the potential a country has to be good at anything. It does not determine how good they are at anything, but it determines their potential. And the more potential a country has, the easier it is for them to be good at something. This could be anything from scientific development to manufacturing to building a sports team and anything in between. It all requires economics. Now, in the U.S. and a few other countries, unfortunately, their school systems are tied to a lot of youth and development sports. And they figured out in the early 1900s that the larger schools were usually outperforming the smaller schools in sports. So they started classifying different schools in different divisions based on student enrollment and a few other factors so that schools of similar sizes would be playing each other in official matches. Something like this should have also been implemented into international sports, but international sports are still living in the Stone Age. So let's take a look at Spain and Argentina. We can see that Spain has over twice the economy of Argentina. I was not expecting that, actually, but that's how it is. So we have an economically illegitimate game here. You're not looking at a man-for-man and man-for-wealth result. Now, there's a lot worse examples in this World Cup and in international sports, but still, it's not legitimate. There's been over 100 games in the FIFA World Cup 2026, and under 20 of them have been legitimate. And unfortunately, this one also fails. Now, if we implemented something like the U.S. school systems had into international sports, it would have to be a little bit more fluid. It would be a little bit more complex. However, it's still very doable, and there's no excuse not to have something like that. So I'm going to give you an example of a game that would take place. I'm not saying it would replace this one. I'm just giving an example of how it might look. So we're going to look at these administration zones of Argentina, which are provinces, I think. And Buenos Aires province. We'll take that one, for example. And we're going to look at some regions in Spain. Something that's economically equivalent would be Andalusia or Catalonia are approximately equivalent to Buenos Aires. Yes, Buenos Aires has way more population, but the GDP per capita of these regions are much higher than Buenos Aires. So you would have, if you played those teams that would be created from players born or raised in those regions, if you played them against each other, you would have a legitimate man-for-man, man-for-wealth result.